Let's talk about don't complain, difficulties in the wilderness. In the events of the Exodus in the wilderness, the Israelites frequently encountered difficulty. And many of these difficulties were actually quite serious. At times they worried about themselves and their flocks and herds dying of thirst, for example. But despite that, we saw that Elohim continued to provide for them along the way. Even when things looked like they were getting worse, even when things became rather difficult, that provision was still there. Things still did work out. But there were times that they allowed themselves to begin complaining, even though they were witnessing signs and wonders on a daily basis. Once the tabernacle had been built, they saw the fire and the cloud over the tent on a daily basis. And they were given the miraculous food, the manna, the mon. But even though that was the case, even though they had literally seen a whole nation destroyed right before their eyes in signs and wonders, they still allowed themselves to lose perspective. And we see several examples of this in the accounts regarding the wilderness. Let's look at Numbers 11. And the people were as ones grumbling themselves, evil in ears of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah heard, and his nose glowed, and fire of Yahuwah burned in them, and it ate in edge of the camp. This is the first incident described in Numbers 11. It says that the people were grumbling. As a result of this, fire broke out as punishment. And the second incident in this passage starts in verse 4. And the gathered gathering, which was in near him, yearned themselves yearning, and they returned. And sons of Israel wept moreover, and they said, who shall cause us to eat flesh? Presumably this gathered gathering is the people that came with Israel in their departing from servitude. And they were yearning, and the Israelites were weeping on account of the food that they wished that they had had, even though they still had the manna, the mon. We remember the fish, the cucumbers, and the melons, and the vegetation, and the onions, and the garlic. And now our vitality is dehydrated. There is nothing but the mon, our eyes. So the Israelites were remembering all of the things that they had access to while they were in service. And now, out in the wilderness, they didn't have those things. They just had the mon. While they were still being provided for, they were dissatisfied about this. And Moses heard the people wept to his families, man to opening of his tent, and nose of Yahuwah glowed exceedingly, and evil in eyes of Moses. So the Israelites gave way to being upset, and they were very dissatisfied with the manna, the mon, the miraculous food they were being fed with. They wished they had access to the things that they had under slavery. But out in the wilderness, even though they were being provided for miraculously and witnessing all these signs, and it should have been apparent to them that Elohim was with them, they still allowed themselves to go into this state, to get very upset and displeased. And Elohim was displeased as well, displeased with what they were doing. And so we see that Elohim did provide them with flesh, but it was not exactly as they had wanted. The flesh between their teeth not yet being cut, and nose of Yahuwah glowed in people, and Yahuwah caused to smite in people, smiting exceedingly many. And he called the name of that place burials of yearning, that there they buried the people, the ones yearning themselves. The people lost perspective on everything that had been going on around them. They became fixated upon those things they didn't have, the things that they wished they had before while they were in slavery. They became so fixated on that they forgot all of the signs and wonders, and they lost sight of what it was that they were doing. They were out in the wilderness so that they could be brought to the land of Canaan. And if they had continued trusting, they would have been brought into Canaan, and they would have had access to all of those things that they were wanting, and even more. But instead, they allowed themselves to get into this state of being just terribly upset with their conditions, and they forgot all that Elohim had done for them, and they were punished as a result. And this is certainly not the only time this went on. We've looked at 2 incidents just in this chapter alone, and there are multiple other incidents where the Israelites tested Elohim and acted very similarly. Even incidents where they called the man cursed, for example. It is no coincidence that in Deuteronomy, the people are commanded to remember the events of Horeb. Deuteronomy 4:9-10. But be guarding to you, and guard your vitality exceedingly, lest you shall forget the things which your eyes saw, and lest they shall withdraw from your heart all days of your lives. Day which you stood before Yahuwah your Elohim in Horeb. It can be easy to think that the Israelites surely were always mindful of all that had been going on, of all of the signs and wonders they had witnessed. But obviously they were not. They allowed themselves repeatedly to test Elohim, to go into complaining, to be upset about their conditions, and to even wish that they were dead, or wish that they were back in slavery. They did not maintain the perspective of the things that had gone on. They did not look at the big picture. And it can be useful to recognize the mistakes that they made so that we hopefully will not do likewise. Hopefully we can see those mistakes and learn from them without making the same mistakes. Hopefully we can seek to do better than our forefathers did, and we can seek to guard ourselves exceedingly, to guard our vitalities. Because it's not just a matter of, we'll always remember the reasons we're doing these things, or, we will always be mindful of everything that we've witnessed. Witnessing the events at Horeb, the fire on the mountain, the voice of Elohim, I would imagine that to be a very significant event in their eyes, in their minds. Yet they have to be commanded to be mindful of it, to always guard it and keep it on their heart, to guard themselves from forgetting it. So obviously, it's not just as easy as, we'll always be on the right track, because we can see that was not the case. We need to guard ourselves. We need to be mindful of what we have witnessed, and we need to do what is necessary to stay on track, to keep that larger perspective, and to remember that He is providing for us, even when things seem like they're getting difficult. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out some of my other videos about other Torah issues, and be sure that you stay in touch so we can continue this discussion. Thanks for watching. Remember the commands. Shalom.